What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Breathe and Air podcast, where everyday action meets extraordinary mindset. Today's guest and I go way back to high school. And man, this guy has always been a bright guy, a sensational athlete, and, someone who's always had a loud voice and a personality that people are drawn to. And I think that, God has a plan for this guy, and he's definitely been using it to the best visibility. So Geoff Green, thank you for coming on, brother.
Yeah, glad. Thank you for having me, man. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. Like you said, we go back, and it's just awesome to see you using your voice and your platform for something like this, bro. So it's a pleasure, man.
No, we were just talking before the show about the crazy times that we're in, and just how both of us, I think, were like, hey, this is a time for me to, use this time for a positive. And I think a lot of people have done that. A lot of people have come up in a bunch of different ways during, this pandemic. So what are some things that you've been doing like during this time of, confusion and just all over the place?
Yeah, for sure. So the big thing that I've been doing is starting my I guess you can call it mind and body coaching and speaking business, right? So I do both. Well, I'll do what are now turned into virtual gigs, right? And I'll do them for a lot of different populations. A lot of my stuff is athlete focused, but it can spread out to literally anybody who wants to increase or enhance their performance in anything that they do, right? And so that can be your work, right? That can be relationships, that could be, family, that could be whatever your craft is, music, art. It doesn't matter. It could be, sustained focus. It could be better working memory, anything like that. And so that's been really, really cool, building that up from the ground and getting clients and working with them one-on-one. That's been dope. And outside of that, I've been working on, I guess, training with football. I got an interest at the professional level overseas. So I am getting more and more in tune with that. Waking up every single morning, early in the morning, getting my body right, as well as getting my mind right. And my thing is, I look at the pros, I look at their recipe, because obviously they got it down, and I mimic it. Whatever they're doing, I'm doing. Whatever their schedule looks like, I try and make my schedule like that, right? And so I'm just trying to get to that next level. So that passion of football has definitely been has come back to life in me. Of course, I played in middle school and high school. And yeah, that's really what I've been doing, as well as, working on my PhD, doing research. Had to do a lot of research remotely for a while when all the labs were shut down. Even when my projects were shut down, I was still coding, doing stuff, so that when we started back up, I could hit the ground running. So between those three things, it's been, most of my time.
Yeah. I mean, we could go into so many different things there, but I think it's so interesting seeing you transition, because, I mean, obviously you could have played at the collegiate level straight out of high school, and I'm sure you had interests. Like I said, you're a sensational athlete at that level. And then you went into a different path, which I'm sure we can talk about, but how did this fire get reignited for you to start, putting the cleats back on?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So it's actually my roommate. We met freshman year, two engineers, had no idea what our futures looked like, but like we clicked, and so it ended up senior year when we moved off campus, we were roommates together. And he played club football his junior year and then his senior year as well. And so senior year, we're always in the same apartment, and he's, constantly telling me like, bro, you got to come out for club football. Like, they need you, like they could use you, this, that, the other. I'm like, nah, man, basketball's my thing. At that time, I was trying to walk on for basketball. Even though I went to school for on an academic scholarship, I had to focus on my academics. But come time for senior year, most of my credits were done. I was ready to, lace them up one more time. Never got a chance to walk on. And so he's like, yeah, you need to choose a football route. It took until I had a gap year after my senior year, and then my first year of the PhD program, and then my second year, the summer right before the fall of my second year of PhD program, I hit him up. I was like, bro, I miss it so much. I miss it so much. All this time you've been telling me to go back, I feel like I got to do it. And so he gave me his gear, his helmets, his pads, all of that stuff. I got some new cleats, and showed up to the first day of tryouts. And it clicked. Everything came back to me: the footwork, the hands, the agility. So it's really a blessing from God that I'm still able to do all of that stuff and do it at a even better level than before.
Yeah. And I mean, everyone knows, but for the college athletes listening, know that to be able to not play for a while and then just hop back out there, there's some God gifted athletic ability right there. And Gino's definitely always had that. So I know you've already said, like, all right, you were an engineer, now you're working on a PhD, you got the football mixed in there. Tell us a little bit about how this started. Like, what was your mindset coming out of high school? Why didn't you pursue that opportunity to play college athletics out of high school?
Yeah. Coming out of high school, my mind was mostly focused on the academics, just because I was fortunate enough to get a full ride academic scholarship. Right. And so, freshman year, my plan was, I still had sports, on my mind, right? Even though I was there for academics. So freshman year, I was taking all the weed out classes, which are all the chems, the bio, the physics, the calculus 2 and 3, all of that engineers have to take. Yeah. And I still wanted to play, right? So at that point, it was all about basketball, right? So I was going to join the club team. I made the club team tryouts, ended up failing physics. Just like that. So I had to tell the coach, I was like, man, I got to have my priorities straight. I got to remember why I came here in the first place. Like, if I don't perform well academically, I could lose this whole scholarship. And there was no way that I was able to get to OSU without having this scholarship. Like, I don't come from money like that. Right. And so I had to reprioritize. And so that's basically, I got in the mindset of, okay, it's all about school. And I basically carried that out throughout the rest of my time there.
Right. So you start out as an engineer, and then you're like, okay, that sport passion may have, hindered your academic ability a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
So what made you say, okay, engineering is not maybe something? Because I feel like a lot of people go through this process where, whether it's outside influences, whether it's some predisposition that they had going into college or even going to college in the first place, and they realize, they're like, oh, what am I going to do with this? Why am I doing this? So what was the process for you, and how did that, come about?
Yeah, for sure. So it was I spent 2 years in engineering. I was taking the ECE, which stands for electrical and computer engineering classes. And they were getting, harder and harder. They were getting more and more involved. And so I would, talk to my engineering buddies at the time and be like, yo, as we go further, like, do you find that this stuff is getting like more dry, like more boring? And they're like, no, like, this stuff is good. Like, this is what we expected. This is what we love. And that's when I was like, I think I might have chose the wrong thing, because it was really OSU. I love OSU, but it's an R1. That means it's a big research school. So a lot of things that we were doing was theoretical and abstract. I wanted more application. I wanted a way that I could help people directly, and I wanted to see that immediately. And I couldn't see that. So it was that summer of 2015. I did a study abroad in Brazil that May. For the month of May, I lived in Brazil. By the way, one of the most amazing experiences. That's actually what gave me travel lesson. That's why I'm traveling all over the world now. And we can, get into that in a little bit. But coming back, I got funded by OSU to do like an independent project. So I got to choose what the topic was. And I'm, stumbling around the internet trying to find, okay, what's something really cool that a lot of people aren't doing. I came across music cognition, basically the way the brain responds to music. And boom, I did a project on it. I created it. I loved it. People who I presented it to, they ate it up. And that was my intro to neuroscience. And from then I, switched my major, took all the different neuro classes, learned the structures and the functions and all of that good stuff. And I was like, yeah, I definitely know that this is something for me, because though the classes are still hard, just as hard as engineering, and they got harder as you went along, it was intriguing. Like, my attention was held throughout the lectures, and I wanted to know more. It's not like, okay, when is class over? It's like, no, like, I had questions after class, so I knew that was a good sign.
Man, that's so funny that you say that too, because it's actually one of the things that I've been really looking into lately, as far as neuroscience and like neuroplasticity and like those kind of things, especially, with the podcast and the mindset aspect of it, the actual science behind that. And then on that, your project being music based and what music does to the brain. I love music. I think it's, one of my second passions. I love to play guitar and sing here and there in the shower, not no, I'm just playing, but man, so what was kind of the thesis as far as your music, and brain cognition? Like what was the findings there?
Yeah. So basically, I dove deeper into harmonics, right? So it was a simple consonance versus dissonance chord study, right? So basically, consonance is what sounds good to the brain versus dissonance, what sounds bad to the brain. Who knew that would foreshadow basically what I would be doing as far as thoughts and habits and everything that's good for your mind and how it influences the body, as well as everything that's bad for your mind and how it can influence the body going into placebo versus the nocebo effect, all of that good stuff. But for now, it was just about music. And so what I did is I went into the physics of it. Thankfully, I had a physics background to help me with that. And so I went into like the theories of the scientists from the 1800s, Helmholtz, the theory that he developed with harmonics. And I juxtaposed how physics says that we should perceive chords, consonant versus dissonant, versus how humans today actually perceive chords, consonant versus dissonant. And it was really, really cool because there was a very good correlation with, this physics equation that was created in the 1800s and what people perceive now. But there was a little bit of difference. And so that allowed me to go deeper and say, why is there a difference? And I had to really think about it. The simple chord structures that we use today are different than they used back then, right? So for example, something that would sound good to you and I, like a progression, right, would be something that might not sound as good to our grandparents. Or something that sounds really good to them might be different than what sounds really good to us, just because as eras go, as music progresses, the chords that are most prominently used, or even the chord progressions or chord changes, those change as well. Those tweak with the times and with culture. And so what sounds good to us, what we're programmed to think, oh, I really like that, kind of changes and it shifts over time. And so I thought that was really, really dope. And so, of course, I went a little bit deeper into that and presented at different, poster forums and research forums. And that's when I knew, I was like, yeah, the brain is so amazing, because it's literally the size of two of your fists put together, and there's 7 point something billion in the world, yet nobody knows how one works in its entirety. Like front to back, nobody knows how it works. If we did, we'd be able to mind read, and we can't yet. And that's why I'm so fascinated by it, because there's so much room. Like if you're in neuroscience, you'll always have a job. You'll always have, people always want to know about the information that you have, because it's so fascinating. So yeah, I ate it up.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's applicable because it's things that, it's not easily applicable. Like you said, creating habits and that kind of stuff is hard, but it is something that is in all of us, and it's innate to all of us, and it runs us. It's our circuitry, which is crazy you don't really realize the way your neurons are firing, like any of that kind of stuff, like what triggers it, those kind of things. And so now you've gone into you decided that was like a cornerstone, like, hey, this is something that I'm really passionate about.
Yep.
What was the next step after that music project into neuroscience?
Yeah. So really after that, neuroscience was, really cool. And I, was going into my junior year of doing neuroscience, did the classes, loved it. Going into my senior year, did the classes, loved it. But it didn't become real until I needed it most. You're like, all right, what exactly does that mean? And it was my senior year of undergrad, where I had my first and my only near-death experience. Like it was a wake-up call that I've never had before. I didn't even know that I needed it. But basically, my senior year, there was a point in time where I was having like an identity crisis, right? And a lot of people have heard my story on this, but this is what jump-started everything, right? And I was rooting myself in other people. I was letting other people come inside me and live. Like I didn't have any idea who I was at the core, right? At the most elemental part of my being. And so when you don't have an idea of what your identity is, you really don't have a purpose in this world, right? How can you know your purpose unless you know who you are, right? And if you don't have your purpose, how can you reach fulfillment or self-actualization, which is the number one desire of man? All of us want to be fulfilled. It doesn't matter how vain it is or how essential it is. It could be something as vain as, just wanting a bunch of money, or it could be something as essential as wanting love. Regardless, the number one desire of man is fulfillment, right? And so you can't reach that if you don't have purpose. You can't reach purpose if you don't have an identity. And that's where I was. And every single day was just like going through the motions. It's like I was a shell of a person and just waking up with the weight of the world on top of me, trying to be a people pleaser, trying to seek affirmation and like fill myself as if I was like a bottomless pit of affirmation and never getting full, but just being left disappointed. And like I said, it was an awful feeling. My mental health was off. It affected my body, affected my grades. And it was no way to live. And so it was actually that October 6, 2016, I'll remember the day as if it was yesterday. I was fortunate enough to present some research in Bermuda at a conference. And to make a long story short, we were inside the conference in this hotel, and the hotel had these big windows. We're in a 5-star hotel. Like they treated us so well on this trip. 5-star hotel, big old windows that overlooked the pool. And then beyond the pool was the palm trees. And beyond the palm trees was this ocean, and it's just shining and glimmering in the sunlight, right? And if you've ever been to Bermuda, it is the only place that I've seen that has like translucent blue water and pink sand. It doesn't look real. And so I'm like, bro, like we can't be up in this conference. I'm like, we got to go enjoy this. We got to go outside, right? So middle of the conference, we sneak up, get our trunks, take the private shuttle down to the hotel beach, the private hotel beach. And we get there. There's a lot of people, there's family, there's kids, all this stuff. And so we go 2 beaches over, but it's a lot more remote, a lot more private. It's just me and my buddy. And then eventually we noticed 2 guys walking over. We noticed them from the conference. We met them the first day. One was from USC, one was from Wisconsin. And we started kicking it. I look out to the distance and I see this big old rock like in the middle of the water. For some reason, it sounded like a good idea to go swim out to that. So I'm like, hey, y'all, let's go swim out to that. For some reason, it sounded like a good idea to the rest of them as well. And so they're like, all right, bet. And so we hopped in, and when we were swimming, and the water was pretty choppy, but it wasn't anything like we could handle. So we got to the front of the rock. Front of the rock was a pretty steep slope, incline, and it had sharp protrusions coming out of it, like sharp parts of the rock that would come out of it. But that was our only way up because the sides and the back were more of a steep drop off. And so we ended up climbing up. You know, I had bloody hands, bloody feet, just a little bit of scratches here and there. But we got to the top, and that's what mattered because the view was amazing, right? It was amazing. And so we're looking out, we're looking at the rest of the ocean, we're looking back at the shore, the waves crashing on the shore, and we're just having a good time. We have an appointment at 5 p.m. though, so we got to be back for that. That's a mandatory appointment. And so little did we know, as we were sitting on the rock, we were maybe there for like 45 minutes, but the waves became a lot more violent, right? So we're looking for a way to get down. We're like, the waves kind of look, real scary right now. And so we're like, how are we going to get down this wave? Because we don't want to, or this rock, because we don't want to go down the front part. Because, if you slip, you're going to slide up and tear up your whole side and all that stuff on the sharp part. The sides and the back were more of a steep drop off. And like I said, the water is like translucent blue. So you can see to the floor of the ocean, which around the base of the rock was not that deep. You can see that there were rocks down there, but you didn't know how deep it was, right? And so we didn't want to just jump in and, possibly, break an ankle or a leg or anything like that. And so eventually the waves rose more and more and more. And to the point to where it got so high that the drop off wasn't as steep. I've never seen waves become this violent, this quick, by the way. And so the guys from USC is like, if we let the wave take us, it'll take us away from the rock and we can swim back to the shore. You just got to wait for the right wave, the big enough wave, so you can jump in and ride it back. We're like, we really don't have any other choice. So cool. So we saw he did it. He waited for the right wave. He did it. He was swimming back. We're like, bet. Okay. So the guy, and then the other guy, he jumped in. He rode the wave back. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to jump in. I rode the wave back, and we were swimming back. And if you remember, there was 4 of us, though. I looked back, and my other friend was still on the rock. And so we're like, somebody's got to go get him. That's when I swim back into the water. I get to the base of the rock. I'm basically trying to coax him to jump in. I'm trying to convince him, like, bro, we got an appointment. You got to just trust your body. Like, we got to go. I'm in the middle of my sentence, and this wave from my left comes and completely crashes on top of me. And it's dragging, like I said, I'm at the front of the rock, which is where the sharp protrusions are. So it's dragging my arm and my ribs and my thigh against like the sharp part of the rock. And so I'm getting cut as I'm getting drugged underneath the water, right? And so eventually I get back to the surface. And when I get back to the surface, before I even had a chance to inhale, to take my next breath, right? I could barely open my eyes, but I couldn't even inhale to take my next breath. An even larger wave comes from my right, and this time it completely swallows me up, it engulfs me, and it drags me underneath the water and away from the rock. So now I'm at this point where I'm doing somersaults. I have no orientation of what's up, down, left or right, and I begin to panic, right? And so after a few moments, I level out, I realize what direction is up. And so I consider myself to be a pretty good swimmer, right? And so I'm swimming stroke after stroke after stroke, trying to break the surface, right? Trying to reach the surface of the water. Nothing. Stroke after stroke. I'm thinking to myself, there's no way I got drugged this deep underneath the water. Nothing. Stroke after stroke. I'm reaching again. Nothing. I get to the point to where if I don't get it in this next stroke, like I'm gonna just have to give up. It's not like I wanted to die or I was okay with dying. I just literally had nothing else. I was at the end of myself, completely spent. I had nothing more to give, right? If you've ever heard E.T., Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher, talked about the story, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful, right? That's where I was. The only thing that I wanted, the only thing that I desired, the most important thing was just getting another breath. And I couldn't get it. My mind was on nothing else but getting that next breath. When I realized I couldn't get that next breath, and I realized that my life was literally about to end right here, my body's just going to be floating somewhere in the Caribbean Sea. They would say, like, in near-death experiences, your life flashes before your eyes. And I can attest to it. Like, it's so true. Like, not my whole life, but like certain highlights, right? And like I said, at this point in my life, at this point in time, I definitely wasn't living my life for God. I wasn't living it up to what the purpose that he put me on this earth for. And I had so many idols and just, it was awful. And so I'm thinking, like, what's the legacy that I'm going to leave behind? Like, if this is it, what have I done? Right. I was 21 at the time. What have I done on this earth with my time here? Nothing. I really had nothing to account for. And so I'm thinking, like, what's the last thing I said to my family, right? Like, what's the last time I told my parents I loved them? Who's going to fill my role as a big brother to my younger brother who was about to enter high school at that time, right? It's just crazy. I'm like, this cannot be it for me, right? And so I'm like, oh, well, I get ready to open up my mouth just to inhale water and get it all over with. And that's when the tip of my middle finger, my right hand, it breaks the surface of the water. I feel it. So there's a shot of hope that comes in me. I, spring above the surface of the water. I'm gasping, I'm panicking. I'm looking around for the rock. I find the rock and I swim towards it as fast as I can. And I'm climbing up. I don't even care about the sharp parts anymore. I'm just trying to survive. And my friend is looking at me as if he saw a ghost. He's like, I thought you were gone. Like, the amount of time that you were underneath the water, it doesn't make sense for you to be here. And like, that is the main point of the story. Like, it doesn't make sense for me to be here, but the fact that God had a purpose for me, but the fact that God wasn't done for me, right? Done with me, right? And so after that experience, eventually, the waves calmed down a little bit and we were able to make it back. But for those were the longest, I don't know, 10 minutes in my life between jumping off the rock and swimming back to the shore and then coming back, trying to get my friend, being drugged under, going back on the rock. Like, the waves I've never seen such violent waves. And it was almost as if it would happen at that specific time for God to give me the wake-up call that he did, right? And so that's when I became monomaniacally focused on using my education. I'm like, I'm in neuroscience. I can use this to help me. Like, I got to get out of this pit, this hole that I'm in. I got to get my mental health back. I got to get my life back. I got to start living for me, right? And so I became focused in using my studies and actually applying it to real life situations. I started reading books. I started listening to all the thought leaders who spoke about the mind and neuroscience and the subconscious and all of that stuff. And I started picking up all the details and all the good information and insights. So not that I could only, help myself, but I could help others who, might be going towards the same thing, or others who are suffering currently the same thing that I was. And so that's really it was kind of a long story, but that is really what started this entire journey, right? And so I became so obsessed with it. But even though I was obsessed with it, I wasn't obedient right away, right? So this was my senior year. It took me 3 years until I posted my first video on my platform talking about the stuff that I talk about right now. What was it? It was fear. It was fear that was keeping me from doing this, fear of judgment. It was fear of failure. And then it was also fear of success. What if I do succeed? Then what? What's the pressure that comes with that, right? And your mind can play tricks on you. Once I got over that and I posted the first one, the rest is history.
Yeah. And that's the first jump and the first step. First off, That story is crazy. I literally got chills. Like I was like, oh, that's wild. But that's so true. What you said at the back end of that first step, that fear, that what are people going to say? How is
Yeah.
this affect on me? What if I don't do good? What if I do? Like all of these things that start going through your mind is that barrier from you reaching your success, from you reaching and finding. If you're failing, all you're doing is getting one step closer to success, to finding. Like literally, like, okay, think if when we're trying to ride a bike, right? We're trying to ride a bike. If we didn't ever fall off the bike, or if we didn't ever get on the bike in the first place to fall off and fail, then we wouldn't ever learn. If we never took the tricycle or the little training wheels off, right? If we never took the training wheels off, we'd never learn how to, find our center balance. And
Yep.
and that's where I felt like I was at the beginning of this year with, even though I was just a year and a half or so out of college, I was already yearning for something more. Like I was already like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? Who am I going to be? The questions you're asking, well, how am I going to be remembered? Like, what's my legacy going to be?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I had this great opportunity with this job that I'm in, but like, there's more. I know there's more. There's more. And once I got out of that first year of like my head spinning from a brand new job and like new place and new people, and I had that little bit of time to reflect, I was like, what is this? And it was really at the beginning of January where, everyone's making resolutions and whatnot. And I'm thinking, okay, what kind of resolutions? Like, what are these things that I want to do? And I remember it just hit me one day, and it was stop talking, start doing. And listen to this podcast has heard me say this before, because this is how this became what it is now. And it seems like our journey is similar in certain ways. I wasn't getting tossed up against rocks. That's wild. But like, that's where the thought process was. Like, what is, like, all these things in my head, all these thoughts. And I know everyone has these thoughts and ideas and things that they want that they want to do. And they sometimes sit on them. Right. So I kind of just said, all right, let's strip down everything and be as genuine to yourself as you can be, and try and help others in the process. Right. And the crazy thing is, man, is that I have gotten so much out of this and this platform, and just having that mindset in general, not even the podcast, just having that mindset. The amount that I've received from being able to try and give and be, vulnerable and those things, it's tenfold.
Yeah, 100%. And there's something that you said in there. Basically, there's like a theme of what you're saying is like service. How do you be successful in life, right? It's really when you have a service-based mindset where you want to help other people, where you want to give other people. It's not about, okay, what can I get? What can I attain? But when you have something in this world that you can help others with, and you have a gift that you can give to others and you can impact their lives because of your service, like that's when you're going to be great. That's when you're going to feel fulfilled, right? And there's no, like I said before, there's no greater feeling than service. When you're able to add value in a certain part of the marketplace that nobody else can add, that's when you're number one in that marketplace, right? And the money and all that stuff, that'll take care of itself. But if your number one thing is service, that's when you're going to be successful. When your number one thing is adding value to others, that's when you're going to be successful.
Right. And if you even want to look at the titan of that right now, Amazon, right? Through all this, their stock is just, I think Bezos is worth like over 200 billion now. First person. Yeah. And he only owns 16% of Amazon. Amazon's worth like $1 trillion, roughly, with a T. But how did they get there? They provided a service to people that people need and want.
Yep.
And you can look at it in that way. And obviously monetary, we all want to make as much money as possible. But if you want to even break it down to motivation or inspiration or, clean eating or this or that, like it could be whatever. It's providing a service to somebody. And that's where I think a lot of people miss it on the pursuit of whether it's entrepreneurship or, trying to make money or trying to find happiness, is that it's all inside, right? It's all ego-centered, and it's all like, what am I doing wrong? And like, how am I doing this? And me.
Right.
But the answer is outside of us. And it's easy to miss. I mean, I do it all the time.
Yeah.
But you just have to constantly remind yourself that.
Yeah, definitely. That's good, man. That's so good.
Yeah. So obviously you were in Bermuda and had a crazy experience. First off, how did that conference feel after? Like, you had that mandatory conference at 5. Like, were you just shook to the core?
Yeah. I still had like adrenaline rushing through my body, because my body was in self-preservation, like fighting for its life, and so I was literally shaking for the rest of the night, and it was weird. I didn't have time to process everything that just happened. It didn't really sink in until way after the trip, maybe a week later, when I was just sitting down by myself and realizing, like, again, like, I should not be here. Like, that was easily like my last few moments on earth. And that's when all of it sank in, and it hit like, just like, ironically, like a wave, like it hit me. And it's like, wow, I can't throw, this is my second chance. I can't throw this away. I got to be intentional with every single thing I do. Like, this is my time to turn it around. Right. But it took a while to process, like, something that crazy that just happened like that. So yeah, it was a weird time, but I'm so thankful for it.
So you were saying earlier that your first little trip, was it to Brazil? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So that sparked this, wanderlust, what have you, the wanderlust, the traveling bug. And explain to me some of, like, your travels. I know you've been a lot of places and seen a lot of things.
Yeah. So yeah, the first one, like I said, was Brazil, and it was so cool because ever since like high school, I became obsessed with like the Brazilian culture. I love like the dancing, the music, the food, and just like the scenery. Like, Brazil is so beautiful, and so going there, I still remember like the first few nights I was there. It just seemed unreal. It seemed surreal. It was like, wow, I'm really over here, and coming back from that trip, it's like, okay, that's when I realized just how small the US is. No matter how big it looks on the map, just how small it really is, and how big the rest of the world is, and how there's somebody who is living on the complete opposite side of the world, who has no idea that I even exist. I never really realized that they exist, but they have this whole other life, and they have this whole other myriad of experiences that they could share with me that could truly impact me. I didn't realize that until I was in Brazil, and I had conversations with people over there. We were also taking Portuguese over there, so I began to learn the language. And when you're living in a country, you really can pick up the language really, really quick. When I would speak it, it was still like broken Portuguese, of course, but I was able to understand it. And there's such a richness of information and understanding that you get when you're able to have these conversations with locals, right? And so I took that with me everywhere else that I went, right? And so after that was, of course, the Bermuda trip senior year in the fall. In the spring, I got funded to do more research, and I made a trip out of it because I got like more money than I needed. So I asked like my lab mentor, like, what should I do? Like, I got all this extra money. He's like, make a trip out of it. So the conference was in Sevilla, Spain. But what I did, I took 2 weeks out of my senior year, missed class, and I went to Madrid. Then from Madrid, went to Barcelona. Then from Barcelona, went up to Paris. And then from Paris, went down to Sevilla, Spain for the conference. Was there for 2 nights and 2 days. And then I went over to Portugal. And then after Portugal, went back to Madrid to fly home. And that just made it worse. It's like, oh my gosh, like, I need to do this all the time, right? I was over there. I had a glimpse of what life outside of like the scarce mindset was, right? I had plenty of money. It wasn't coming out of my pockets. It was money that OSU funded me. I was able to eat at the fancy restaurants. I was able to do this, that, and the other. I didn't have to worry about anything but just having a good time and enjoying myself, enjoying the people that I was with, and enjoying the experiences that I had, right? I didn't have like the structure of a 9-to-5 or worrying about, okay, what do I have to do now? What do I have to do then? It was just freedom. And so that added to the wanderlust. And so after that, the very next trip was even bigger because it was my next international trip, but it was solo. So I went over there, like when I went over to, Europe, the first time I had like a buddy who was with me. When I went over down to Colombia, Cartagena, Colombia, completely alone. And everybody thought I was crazy. One, because it's Colombia, but they don't realize how much Colombia has, been cleaned up, especially Cartagena. But when I did that, you are forced to immerse in your surroundings, in the culture, and all of that. You're forced to talk to locals. You're forced to get the real experience, because you don't have your friend that you can, fall back on and say, oh, let's go out and do this together. Let's go out and do that together. I met different people every day. I woke up every day not knowing what the day had to bring. I ended up doing some of the coolest things with people that I met from around the world. And then the next day I would wake up and do the same exact thing with like a new group of people. It was so cool, and it was so freeing. It was just an amazing experience. And you learn things. A lot of the people that I met were, they were young adults, but they were older than I was. So I was able to learn from their life experiences, right? And so you learn things through traveling that you just can't learn in the textbook. You can't pick it up in a textbook. And so I think that's why it's so rich. And there's something that's built up inside of you, a self-sufficiency when you do an international trip, or you're a solo traveler, for the first time, because again, you're forced to, you're forced to immerse in your surroundings. You're forced to increase your confidence to go out and do this, that, and the other, to go out and meet people and talk to people and have these experiences. I could have, stayed in my room all day, and not, because I didn't have anybody, but I was like, no, I'm in Colombia, right? I'm about to go out and have an amazing time. And I did. And so that's kind of what it really changed me for the better, because now I'm more of a spontaneous person. I have, greater confidence. I'm always looking to enjoy the moment, right? I'm not always worried about this, that, or letting fear take over. What ifs, none of that. I'm enjoying the moment. And so I could go on. There's a story for every single trip I've done. I'm almost at 30 countries. If you see, I have the map behind me. I still have to scratch off the rest. I literally just started scratching off the first two. But yeah, I would have hit 30 this summer, but Miss Rona kind of messed up all of that. So, but yeah, I'm gonna hit 30 soon, man. I'm gonna hit 30 soon.
Yeah, I've been Portugal and Spain and Africa and Canada and Mexico, I guess. So you got me by quite a bit, but man, I will tell you, just from those and being able to see the different cultures and being able to see, and it makes you feel small, like you said.
Yeah.
Able to see outside of, we get in these bubbles in our own head, and I'm sure you know a lot about the science behind it, but it's just like we get so engulfed in everything that's going on in like our surroundings that we sometimes really forget to be present. And like you said, the biggest thing that I caught out of all of that, obviously the travels and everything's insane, and I'm sure it was such an experience just to see those things. But what you said was the freedom, and you felt free. You had that freedom. You felt free, and that's something that everyone is looking for to an extent, right? To feel that freedom of, I'm on an adventure. I have no worries. I have no cares. I'm present and I'm here and I feel free. So like, I think that being present in the moment and feeling free are very synonymous with each other together.
Oh, yeah.
So how does someone, and you can branch off this however you want, but how does someone get to the point where in their crazy lives and in this social media driven United States and in this outside pressures from every which way and searching for likes from somebody else, or attention from somebody else, to make, how does someone become present in that moment to be able to like maximize their capabilities and their potential?
Yeah. And that's something that has become increasingly difficult as time has gone on, because we live at such a fast society that is existing and fizzling at such intelligent rates. Like we have the internet, and we have, like you said, social media, and we have all of these things at the click of a button, right? And so my big thing, and every time I speak, it always goes back to this, because this is what helped me, is, and I'm going to say it like this, and I'm going to explain it first. You need to internally situate yourself before you externally stimulate yourself. What does that mean? All right. So basically it goes into the morning routine. I'm sure you already have a morning routine. But when I was in, like the heart of my identity crisis, part of that, a big reason for that, is the very first thing I would do when I wake up was I would get on my phone. right? And I didn't realize how detrimental that was until later on. I learned the neuroscience behind it. When you first wake up, like the first few moments when you wake up, and as well as the last few moments right before you go to sleep, your brain is going back and forth between the alpha and the theta brainwave state. In those states, that's when your brain is the most impressionable, right? That's when you're able to impact it. You're able to allow things to seep down into your subconscious, and your subconscious is what truly, runs your life. And so basically what I was doing is I was giving everybody out in the world permission, right? I was giving them permission to tell me how my day was going to go based on what posts I saw, based on what comments I saw on other people's things and on my things, right? Based on even the news, what the news posted, right? Based on that, based on how many likes, dislikes, whatever, we're talking about YouTube, right? All of that stuff, I was giving them that authority to tell me how my day was going to go, because my mind was going to imprint on that, right? And that trend, the way that your mind imprints is going to be like the trend for the rest of the day, right? And so I realized that like I couldn't do that, right? And so when I say internally situate myself, I have a morning routine where I don't even touch the phone until I've gone through everything, that I need to do to get my mind as well as my body right, right? All of it. And I, just to name a few, different journaling techniques, gratitude journaling, affirmations. There's a specific way that I've learned affirmations through NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. It's actually something that I'm getting certified in right now, that makes it even more powerful. Visualization techniques that I've learned from NLP as well. All of that stuff. Of course, I'm a spiritual person, and so reading scripture in the morning, having my devotion, and then getting moving. Getting active, getting your blood pumping is a way to rejuvenate your neurons, as well as jumpstart your immune system and be like a natural energy booster in the morning, right? And so all of that has really helped, among other things, in truly mastering. That's my thing, is mastering my morning so that I can, crush the rest of the day. And it's something that I do every single day to this day. And, people say, that it takes 21 days to form a habit. There's newer research, from UCL, University College London, that says 60 to 66 days to form a true habit. So all you have to do, if you don't have a morning routine, all you have to do is really be disciplined for 2 months. And then after that, you don't have to be disciplined anymore. Why? It's because it's a habit. Like, you do it without thinking. There's a morning that I wake up without doing all of this stuff, I feel weird. It's like I don't want to start my day until I internally situate myself, right? And so once I've internally situated myself and my mind is, in the alpha and theta brainwave state, and it's absorbing everything that I'm doing, then I can go and externally stimulate myself, right? Then I can go and see who messaged me. I can check my emails. I can, post, see what I need to post on social, or see what other people posted, trying to stay in touch with my community, all of that good stuff. And so I think that's the best way of staying present now and not getting sidetracked or pushed and pulled by everything else that's going on. You got to look after you first thing in the morning, right? And then you are saying, this is how the rest of my day is going to go. When you do that, you're no longer in a reactionary state, right? You're no longer reacting to everything that happens to you. You are the initiator. You say, this is the way that my day is going to go. This is the way that I'm going to think. These are the things that I'm going to allow into my mind and into my life. When you have control over your mind and your body like that, you are literally unstoppable. Right. It's like, it's such an amazing feeling. I get hyped just talking about it because of what it's done in my life, right? And so that's the best advice I could give for somebody living in 2020 today,
Man, preach. Let's go. Telling you, that just gets me hyped, because these are things that I have been preaching on and trying to practice. I say trying because these are things I preach, but that I am very flawed at, right? So this month we started a Savage September challenge, and part of these things were things that, like your morning gratitude journals, things that you're talking about, as far as getting up when your alarm rings, waking up, being active when you can. Those kind of things were meditation has been a big thing for me too. Things like that, to try and make them habits. And that was my thing. I was doing them. I was practicing them. They were becoming kind of a routine, kind of something I was starting to, see the light at the end of the tunnel with, especially with meditation. That takes, time and practice to even like be able to shut your mind off and get to that state. But Dude, that's the thing. Consistency with anything is consistency to that point where it becomes subconscious. Because for so long we have woke up and grabbed our phones. Me, right there this morning, first thing I did, boom. Told myself wasn't going to roll over. What I do, roll over for 10 minutes in bed. Then you're in the reactionary state, like and then on top of that, for me, setting intentions to do it, then not doing it, then I'm like, damn, why did I do that? You know, it's like that discipline to be able to make it a habit. I was just telling someone the other day, they were like, man, I wish I had, you know, the motivation or, you know, the motivation to get to the gym and lift weights or whatever it is like you have. And I said, dude, it's a habit.
Yeah.
Point. Like if I don't do it, like you said, if I don't do it, I feel off.
Yeah. Yeah.
A couple days without it, I feel off. So it's already programmed into my brain as a part of my life. It's a lifestyle at this point. Yeah. And because of that, I see dividends from feeling better or whatever else it may be. But that's the same thing with the stuff that we're talking about, especially morning routine. That's been something that I've really been trying to hammer home for my life and to help other people see the power behind it. And you're just, you know, hitting the nail on the hammer with what you're saying. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about neuro-linguistic programming, because I had a lady come on and she did like hypnotherapy and a lot of like alternative medicine with, you know, you're still getting into that like meditative state through different things. And I've always said that, you know, obviously the mind's very powerful, but as far as like its healing powers, and especially in a world that's filled with, you know, prescription after prescription after prescription, that then leads to this problem and that problem. So you had this problem, you had ADD, so take some Adderall, and now you can't sleep. So here's this, and now you're anxious because of the Adderall. Here's some Xanax, and then and all these problems that you have are being medicated, and then that medication, it's just a domino effect, right? So, and I'm sure you've heard of Dr. Daniel Amen when we're speaking of like neuroplasticity and like this kind of stuff, but his story is incredible for how he legit healed his body through this kind of stuff, like physically healed ailments. This stuff is real and powerful. If you think I'm lying, go look it up. There's literal cases where people have had serious ailments, like we're talking even to cancer, where people have tapped into that power of the brain, which is incredible. But I know I went off a little tangent there, but the neuro-linguistic programming, tell me a little bit about that. What is it?
Yeah, basically, and it goes hand in hand with hypnotherapy, right? There is hypnotherapy inside of NLP. And so basically it's the science of the subconscious mind. It teaches us how to tap into the subconscious mind. All right, why is the subconscious mind so important? I said earlier how the subconscious mind is basically what is ruling our life, right? And if you don't believe me, like an easy way I show people this is like, I'm like, okay, tell me your favorite food, right? Or tell me, you know, something that you like, a real fear that you have, right? And then they'll tell me the food of their fear or whatever it is, right? Something that's been programmed in them. And I'll say, okay, on the count of 3, I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3. I want you to stop liking that food, right? Or I want you to not be afraid of that anymore, whatever have you, right? 1, 2, 3. And I'm just like, all right, you know, do you still like pizza? Do you still like chicken? Or like, are you still afraid of, you know, X, Y, Z, right? And they're like, yeah, right. I'm like, I told you to consciously, you know, stop liking that or stop being afraid of that. But why couldn't you? Is because it's not run by your conscious mind. It's run by your subconscious mind. That's just an example of how the things that we like, the things that we dislike, our expectations, our fears, our perception, all of that is learned behavior, and it's programmed and it's sunken into our subconscious mind. A lot of that programming happens within the first 7 years of life. You know, the brain is very developmental. There's still a lot of myelin, you know, in the brain, which basically is increased learning. It's also reasons why kids are able to learn languages better with better pronunciation, perfect pronunciation. It's all about how the brain develops, right? And so your brain is a sponge soaking up all of that stuff, right? And your subconscious mind, you can think of it as a record player. It likes to play the same thing over and over and over and over, right? And it's playing things that it's been programmed to play, right? So it's not like a playlist that's on shuffle. It's going to play the same things, going to play in the same order, all of that stuff, things that your mind has been programmed to do. And no, that's where NLP comes in, right? Because you're able to figure out, how do I actually communicate? How do I bridge the gap between my conscious and my subconscious mind? I want to do this, but I don't feel like I'm able to do that. How do I bridge the gap? And that's where NLP comes in. It has different scripts, it has different practices, it has different ways. And it's also like you hear linguistics in the word. There's certain scripts that you use that they've found that the brain, the mind responds to in a much better way, and like an optimal way. And so they use that when they're, when we're talking to patients and things of that sort. And it's so deep. Like, I'm in the part right now to where if I'm, dealing with the patient, I'm doing a one-on-one coaching session or whatever, like, I am learning how to see what they're thinking based on their physical representation. Like, it's stuff that you would never even look at, like looking at, like the lip, right? Looking at the change in the shape of the lip, or looking at the vertical lines that are in the lip, right? If there's a lot of vertical lines, that means there's not a lot of blood, flowing to the lip. If there's more if there's not a lot of vertical lines, there's not a lot of blood flowing to the face or the lip.
Right.
I said that backwards again. If there are a lot of vertical lines, there is not a lot of blood. If there's not a lot of vertical lines, there is a lot of blood. And so that represents certain different like emotions where blood will rush to your face, like fear, anxiety, or even excitement, right? Things about finding rapport, right? Finding ways to match people when they're speaking to you, right? Using the same words that they use, using the same tone or tempo, using the same vocab, or even the way that you speak. So if I have somebody who's like really animate and like uses their hands, I'm using my hands, right? Things like mimicking their breathing, the rhythm of their breathing pattern, like all of that will allow you guys to subconsciously be in rapport. When you are in rapport with your client, then they're naturally going to feel more comfortable with you. They're going to naturally feel able to open up with you, right? And so there's so many different areas that NLP goes into. It's so cool because it teaches you how to help you. And then it teaches you, okay, now you're the one who's the practitioner and this is the client. This is how you see what's going on in the client, right? And it teaches you both sides. And it's just really, really cool. I'm learning so much. And yeah, I'm, doing that in tandem with like the PhD, like actual, studies that I have to do, and, the business and football and all that stuff. But it's so rewarding because I'm learning stuff that is, it's not like a normal class where you learn some stuff that's cool. And then some stuff is like, it's like everything is like, this is the meat of what you need to know. Yeah. It's like, man, it's so cool.
Yeah. That's what you just said there too, with mimicking or all of these things are in correlation with business for everyone out there that's listening. And like, especially in my field for sales, anyone that's doing sales, you want the person that you're talking to feel comfortable around you. You want to build relationships. Like, sales is about relationships. So these kind of techniques you can take and use in business and in your own life. And like Gino said, it's things that will help you, but then you will see the reverberation of those things, around you, the people and your relationships and the way that, you work in business or whatever it may be. What are some things that we put in our bodies as far as diet? And maybe you could even attest to this with all the other cultures that you've seen and how they eat as opposed to the way Americans eat a lot. And then if there is any correlation with how that works on your brain and body, because I know that is very real. So
yeah.
You can go into that a little bit.
Yeah. So I think one of the most interesting experiences I've had as far as food is when I went to Kyiv, Ukraine, did a mission trip there with FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And over there, it seemed, maybe it was because, we were with the FCA organization who was over there, but it just seemed like everybody was so fit, so healthy, and so like cut. And I'm like, this is weird. And of course, yeah, America, I know we have, supersize and all that stuff. But as we're eating the food, like we're breaking bread together, we're having conversations, we're discussing, talking about the different cultures, and literally at the table where, you have a translator for you because some of them don't even, speak English. And of course, we didn't speak Ukrainian or Russian. But I'm tasting the food and I realized like this food tastes really good. But what they have is a lot of soups. One, because it stretches the food, right? And because they don't have a lot of money. And so I asked, like, what do you guys put in the soup, and like what makes it so different? Or you know, when we'll have regular food, like what do you guys put in it? And I found out that they don't put a lot of salt in anything or a lot of sugar in anything, but it all still tasted really, really good. And so I thought that that was really, really interesting. And then other places when I've gone to, I've been to as far as African countries, South Africa and Morocco, which is very similar to like the Latin countries, you know, being in South America. It's a lot of fish and rice and veggies, right? And that's basically my diet. I'll do a lot of fish or lean chicken. I grill it up. I rarely ever bake or do it on, you know, the stove or anything like that. I'll grill it up. Have certain type of rice, have veggies, which could be, you know, cooked veggies or could be raw veggies. I prefer raw veggies because, you know, they're actually better for you, like leafy greens, things of that sort, the spinaches, all of that stuff. And that's like a simple diet, you know, that I have. And I know that a lot of really, or some of the really good brain foods are like, you know, the nuts or anything like the fish that I mentioned before, the fatty acids that are really good, that are good for your mind. But a lot of it also has to do with like the time, right? And so there's all the traditional science of, you know, don't eat this before or after this certain time, or, you know, eat before this certain time. But everybody is different. Just how they're finding research that like getting 8 hours of sleep really isn't the recipe for being completely well rested. It just like everybody has a different genetic and chemical makeup. Everybody's going to respond to sleep differently. Some people truly only need 5 hours, 4.5 hours. Some people need 9 hours, 10 hours, right? It's going to be case by case. And it's the same thing with the time that you eat your food, right? The time that you eat food, you're going to have to experiment with that. Like there's no special recipe that I can say, oh, this is the perfect window to eat. Like it's going to be based on who you are. It's going to be based on what your schedule is. It's also going to be based on your genetic makeup, right? And what is most beneficial for when it is most beneficial for your body to take in food during your day, throughout your circadian rhythm, your 24-hour rhythm. When are you burning the most calories, right? Based on what you're doing. So it's all of that stuff to take into consideration. So I wish I had like a cute answer to say like, boom, this is it. But it really takes a lot of experimenting, and people are realizing that more with science today. It's not just cut and dry, because if you look at our bodies, like our bodies are amazing. None of us are exactly the same. So how can we have a rule book for each of us that's exactly the same, you know? So yeah, that's more and more what I'm learning. And I've experimented with myself, you know, trying the intermittent fasting, trying different times of eating, trying, you know, what I'm eating, how I'm cooking it, all that stuff to figure out what's good for me, you know. And I'm seeing really, really good results with the diet that I have, as well as what I'm when I'm eating it. So it's been a really cool journey, just like experimenting, trial and error, really.
Right. Yeah. And I'm the same way as you as far as for dinner, most of the times. I mean, I would say almost at least 4 nights of the week for dinner, I'm having some type of fish, whether that's salmon or tuna or cod or somewhere along those lines. I really just love fish for, you know, like you said, the fatty acids, the protein, it's lean. And then obviously, you know, I think sometimes people shy away from all the carbs, but really even carb loading at night, sometimes eating rice with dinner, those kind of things is good for you as far as energy sources in the next day. But I've always said, and we actually just had Andrew Stevens on, who, you know,
Okay.
so, and he's started his own fitness company. So talking like very fitness based, like baseline stuff all across the board. So naturally we talked about food, and same kind of discussion. Like it's very much a per case basis when it comes to sleep, when it comes to, you know, diet, what works for some people. Some people can do like a vegetarian or a vegan diet and get away with it, where other people can't. You know, some people can do the pescatarian, and just, it depends on the needs of that person. You there, big dog?